this particular customer is a mix of no-till and conventional tilled ground, and so we need a wheel that can operate through heavy residue and not wrap trash, and also be able to stitch ground back together, stitch roots, stick heavy ground back together when we get in those no-till situations where ground might be a little harder, but if we pull to the next field and it's been worked, we need to be able to seal up clean ground as well. So these Getter Twister, either a poly or cash version, is going to be very, very universal. If you find yourself running a knots 3 or 4 a lot with, say, an OEM or even a poly version of a closing wheel, need to be looked at adding weight. And whether that's sticking with going to a cast version of this Getter Twister or another one of the cast versions on the market, need to be adding weight back here. You know, these teeth here are the same depth, so they're the same depth, so that's not going to let it dig any deeper. But what you run into is this is heavier. So when you get into heavier, denser soil, more compacted soils, this is naturally heavier, so it's going to stay in the ground. This poly twister, if you got into some hard ground, say you're no-tilling, put in some double crop beans in the middle of June, and that ground's hard. Not always, but these can ride up out of the ground, and we're not going to get that full 1.25 inch depth. We might be only 3/4 of a depth because they can't puncture the ground. But with this weight back here, we're going to keep it in the ground, and then by keeping this one in the ground, we're going to keep the poly. It's Twinkie, it's a little brother over here in the ground as well, because the weight of the wheel, of this wheel, is doing all the work. You see a lot of time guys wanting to run one poly to one smooth rubber, which is fine until you get in some drier planting conditions, because that one smooth rubber wheel is the same diameter as this spike twister is. It's the same diameter, so when you get into hard ground, that smooth wheel is still riding on top. So your tailpiece can't pivot, and so your spike is going to be doing all the work with just a little bit. Half, 1/4 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, but it's not going to be in the ground running to where it should be, because we're in harder ground and the smooth wheel is making it right up. So I don't like to see one smooth wheel compared with a poly wheel. I don't mind a smooth wheel with a heavy cast wheel, but a poly wheel, we see some poor results in the drier planting conditions.